Okay, what's good, everyone? It's Nigel here, Trinidad Empowerment Network. So the Prime Minister says, or she now says, kind of had a change of heart. I'd remind you. So the Prime Minister now says she's not going to copy Donald Trump's mass deportation policy. She is not going to copy Donald Trump's mass deportation policy. And of course, the supporters of the UNC are celebrating because to them, this is apparently proof that she's different from Donald Trump. She's not copying the Donald Trump playbook, according to them. But let's be real for a second. This is the same leader who's been adapting Donald Trump's right-wing playbook for Trinidad for months. You only have to look at what's happened to CPEP. Donald Trump did the same with DOGE in America, the Department for Government Efficiency, where he chopped the vast majority of government jobs. We've seen the same thing happen in Trinidad. There's multiple other examples. But now that Trump is drowning in scandals and sliding in the polls in America, suddenly this part of the strategy is being watered down. This is politics, guys and girls. This is politics. So this no mass deportation position didn't appear out of compassion. Like I said, it's purely politics. Because back in April, if you could remember that far, on the election trail, she promised deportations for migrants involved in crime. That was her promise. And no one in their right mind could argue against that. But now, after pressure from migrant rights group and the reality of funding cuts from bodies like the United Nations Refugee Agency, the tone has somewhat shifted. It is not a change of heart. This is purely damage control. So let's look at the bigger picture here on migration, and let's be honest. Illegal immigration isn't good for Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, I would argue it's not good for anyone. And that is not because we lack the wealth in Trinidad and Tobago to accommodate migrants to a degree. It's not because we lack the wealth, but because the wealth, as I say to you all the time on Trinidad Empowerment Network, the wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. We had the oil booms in Trinidad and Tobago, big oil finds. Then we have the likes of BP, Shell, Perenco, ExxonMobil coming into Trinidad to take the natural resources. But has the average citizen seen any of that wealth? The wealth is there. We just don't see it. Has your life improved from our natural resources, whether you're UNC or PNM or whatever aisle you stand on? Or does it all vanish into the pockets of the political and corporate elite? Whilst we're fighting down each other, they're running away in the background with a swag bag with our wealth. So why are Venezuelans coming to Trinidad and Tobago? The migrant crisis is directly linked to the United States foreign policy towards Venezuela. Directly linked. When Trump cut Venezuela's license to sell oil to the United States and other markets, he choked their economy. Oil is their lifeline. And when a nation cannot breathe people flee. So let's not forget that we as Trinidadians and Tobagonians, of course, have done the same for decades. We too have migrated to the United States, to Canada, to Britain in search of a better life. America's foreign policy is strangling Venezuela. And the more they strangle Venezuela, the more we see migrants coming to the shores. We are indeed their neighbours. We are indeed their neighbours. We've also forgotten the cheap labour factor. The cheap labour factor in America. Farming and agriculture rely heavily on migrant labour. These people are paid next to nothing, so business owners can pocket the profit. Trinidad has a similar dynamic. These business owners employ these migrants who are under the radar. They could pay them whatever they want. They could abuse them and do whatever they want to them whilst they take the profit. Many employers benefit quietly from cheap migrant labor, whilst the government makes tough sounding speeches. These people, these business owners are benefiting from cheap migrant labor in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's not forget Trinidad is also a Christian country, predominantly. Trinidad prides itself on being a majority Christian nation where over half our population identifies as Christian. I'm only mentioning this to say, our faith teaches us to love thy neighbor. Yet online and on social media and in everyday life, the hostility you see towards migrants has to make you ask, or make me ask certainly, are we Christian? Are we Christian in name only? See, the Bible is clear. When a stranger resides among you, treat them as your native born. Love them as yourself. I believe that's in Leviticus. I need to brush up on my Bible skills, but I believe that's in Leviticus. I digress. Remember as well that Jesus himself was a migrant. Jesus himself was a migrant. So, I mention this to say, if we turn our backs on strangers in need, we are not just failing them, we are failing one of the core values of Christianity, one of the core values of Christian teaching. Just a reminder for all of the Christians out there, when you say the silly things you do say on social media, your hatred towards other human beings. So when the Prime Minister says, we won't have mass deportation, is this really compassion? Is this really compassion? Or is it about protecting local elites who profit from cheap labor whilst keeping enough Trump-style rhetoric to please her base? You decide. You decide. So, in closing, I'd say this. We in Trinidad and Tobago need an immigration policy that works for everyone in Trinidad and Tobago. Protecting jobs and resources for locals. Protecting jobs and resources for locals, whilst recognizing the humanity of those fleeing desperate nations or desperate situations like we see that's happening now in Venezuela. What we don't need is imported American politics designed to divide us. We do not need imported American politics designed to divide us, to distract us, and to keep the real wealth in the hands of a few. So it's something for you to think about. What this Prime Minister has suggested is purely common sense. She's looked at what's happening in America right now. She's looked at the scale at which Donald Trump is sliding in the polls. She's looked at the mass migration policy he's employed in America and how much is hated. I believe the last poll shows 70 to 80% of America is in disagreement with his mass migration policy. So seeing that happening, of course, the leaders, our Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago, has thought twice about this. And that's what's happened. And that's exactly what's happened. So that's my take. I'd like to hear what you have to say. I'd like to hear your comments. As usual, I read just about everyone. Please like, please subscribe to Trinidad Empowerment Network. Get us to 10K subs. We are about a few hundred people short of 10K. So let's get to 10K and let's keep building this platform. The bigger we get, the better the information gets. I do my best to bring you the best, most accurate information as I can. So please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys on my next video. For now, much love. God bless. Take care. Peace.